Skyrim is one of the most iconic RPGs ever made. But what if I told you the best story and overall RPG that was built on its engine isn't Skyrim at all? It's actually a mod, a total conversion, made by a handful of passionate developers, and it might just have a better narrative than most AAA RPGs I've played over the years. Welcome to Senzu Games, where I like to dive deep into the RPGs that leave a lasting mark. And today I want to talk about Enderal: Forgotten Stories, a game that looks like Skyrim, plays a lot like Skyrim, but tells a story that's on an entirely different level. This isn't your typical Skyrim mod. It's a reimagining of what the Skyrim engine could be in the hands of storytellers, with something that feels actually real to say. I played through the entire game recently, and I really wanted to talk about it. Here's why I think it deserves far more recognition than it gets. And by the way, if you enjoy this review, please subscribe to Senzu Games and I'll be sure to bring you more in the future. Cheers! So, what is Enderal? Enderal: Forgotten Stories is a total conversion mod for Skyrim, meaning it uses the same engine, but everything else has been rebuilt from the ground up. The entire world, the lore, the characters, the soundtracks, even the gameplay systems, all of it is original. You aren't playing a spin-off of the Elder Scrolls anymore, but rather a completely new game, just built in the same engine. It's developed by the German team Sure AI, and Enderal is the spiritual successor to their earlier project, Nerim. It was in development for years since Skyrim first released, and was originally released as a standalone download in 2016. But today I'm talking about the Forgotten Stories Expansion Edition, which launched later in 2019. And when I say it's a full RPG, I'm not exaggerating whatsoever. Enderal features anywhere from 40 to 100 hours of gameplay, depending on how deep you go, probably even more than 100 hours, and how much you want to explore this new world. It's fully voiced, has an awesome custom soundtrack, professional level writing, and a main quest line that rivals many studio releases in both length and complexity, as well as maturity. I think it has somewhat of a cult following, and I never really understood why, so I devoted a few weekends to playing through it and figuring out what all the fuss was about, and boy, was I pleasantly surprised. This game is genuinely good. Where Enderal truly shines is in its storytelling. You start as a refugee fleeing a war-torn continent, only to be shipwrecked and cast into the unfamiliar and dangerous land of Enderal, in the universe of Vin, which is totally separate and unrelated to Tamriel or the Elder Scrolls at all. From the very beginning, there's a sense of dread and mystery in the game. It's actually a bit creepy. Nightmares plague your character, you have strange visions, and whispers of a phenomenon called the Cleansing, which is like an apocalyptic cycle that threatens to erase humanity. I don't want to get too much into the details of the actual story in order to avoid spoilers, but seriously, it is excellent. As you explore the world and rise through the social ranks, you begin uncovering philosophical and often tragic truths about the society around you, and also about yourself. Enderal dives into some surprisingly dark and introspective territory, from death and grief, mental illness, trauma, religious dogma and blind faith, as well as the inevitability of human self-destruction. It sounds pretty heavy, right? And it really is, which is, I think, what made me enjoy it so much. It doesn't shy away from content or from discussions that other higher budget games might try to avoid. The game constantly asks you to reflect, with characters sparking up conversations and asking you questions that really make you think. Can humanity ever truly change, or are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes regardless of knowledge or technology? And it doesn't spoon-feed you answers. It doesn't give you a clean moral binary like many RPGs, but instead it gives you characters who believe deeply in their own views and forces you to kind of reckon with your own. It's a game that really made me think, and I appreciate that. I also want to discuss the characters. Unlike many games where companions feel like quest dispensers or like comic relief, Enderal's characters are flawed and layered and fully realized. Take Jaspar, for example. He's your charismatic but deeply haunted companion. He's the first companion in the game that you meet, like right off the bat, and he's not your typical fantasy rogue. He's been through war, loss, and betrayal, and over the course of the story, you actually watch him wrestle with his own traumas, He has dreams and regrets, and a worldview that changes over time depending on your influence. And then there's Kalia Sakaresh, a priestess with a deeply tragic backstory and one of the most emotionally complex arcs in the game. Kalia kind of represents the spiritual or emotional heart of Enderal. She's a woman grappling with dark visions, connected to a mysterious force, and a lifetime of repressed trauma from a religious order that demanded obedience from her. What makes Kalia special is how grounded her struggle feels. She's not battling some external curse or demons, she's fighting for control over her identity and her emotions. And it feels real. Conversations with Kalia often dive into topics like mental illness or shame and the fear of being unworthy of love. And as your relationship develops in the game, whether that's as a friend or an ally or something more, your influence can dramatically impact her fate. I was extremely surprised at the level of depth these companions have. You'll meet other characters in the game and get into some actual cool discussions. Like I said, discussions that make you really stop and think. I've been known to skip dialogue as I'm playing games. I read the subtitles quick, and then I mosey on through. I skip everything. But in Enderal, I found myself listening, trying to reason with the characters as I was reading and listening to them speak, and then deciding what to say back that made the most sense to me. This doesn't happen often, and it's why I think I have so much good to say about the characters and the writing. We can also touch on the fully customizable player character, the prophet as you're called in the game. You're not a chosen one in the traditional sense, you're not born special. I don't want to spoil anything, but essentially, you're made special through pain, survival, and struggle. And this is a game where your decisions genuinely affect the outcomes, and these choices and outcomes feel weighty when you consider the quality of the writing. Something that helps with that, and I think one of the most overlooked strengths of Enderal, is how well it builds a believable, lived-in world. The world map is smaller than Skyrim's, I think much smaller, but in my opinion, it's far more intentional. There are no filler dungeons here or randomly generated caves. Every region, from the snowy Frostcliff Mountains to the forested Heartlands to the Star City, feels handcrafted, purposeful, and atmospheric. In Skyrim, I found myself avoiding cave after cave because I knew what to expect after I'd seen 5 of the same ones. In Enderal, when you discover a new cave or any new location, you actually want to explore it because it's going to be different, and who knows what you find inside. You might come across books that deepen the lore, hidden areas that hint at some ancient history, and side quests that are genuinely fun to complete. Sometimes they're pretty standard side quests, and sometimes they go off in directions that you'd never expect. And the main city of Ark, there's only 3 big cities in the game, or even maybe 2, but the main city, which is called Ark, feels like a living organism. It's divided by class, it has its own politics, its own slums and zones for nobles, and its own tragedies. It's basically 5 or 6 different separate regions with bars and shops and places to explore and houses to own as a player. I love getting to know the city and making my way around. And the soundtrack was genuinely beautiful. It was subtle when it needed to be, peaceful when you're just walking around the forest, and it can also get pretty haunting when it wants to punch you in the gut or give you the creeps. The loot players in the taverns were some of my favorite characters, because just like Skyrim, you can stop and choose a song and they'll play and sing it. The music was good enough that I stopped and listened to all the songs in one sitting just to see which one I liked best. Next, I want to talk about gameplay. So Enderal overhauls Skyrim's often criticized leveling and combat system. I'm not a Skyrim hater by any means. I spent hundreds of hours in vanilla and modded Skyrim. I absolutely love the game. But Enderal just does things differently. It's not that one is necessarily better or worse, but I did love the system in Enderal just as well. You don't level up by spamming spells or doing stealth archery. Instead, you follow a more class-oriented system. You don't choose a class, but you choose between disciplines where to put points, like Elementalist or Vagrant. Each has its own skill tree and sort of identity. You have to buy learning books and crafting books to level up your skills, so there are fewer skills, but it takes much more effort to gain levels in them, both in your time by gaining XP and in money to purchase the learning books that you find. The system feels complex at first glance, and it was when I first started. But about 10 levels in, I started to get a good feel for it, and I was building a proper RPG build for the character I wanted to play with a good amount of freedom on the side. Comparing to Skyrim, magic is much deadlier and combat is much tougher. It forces you to slow down, think, and prepare before each fight or encounter. Crafting, alchemy, and enchanting all play meaningful roles, and you can't just really max everything, you have to specialize. That makes the playstyles feel intentional and rewarding and more like an RPG than just like a power fantasy game. It's not perfectly balanced though. Some builds feel underpowered, and the game can occasionally spike in difficulty. I thought light armor was underused, for example, and I ended up using heavy for most of the game just because I felt stronger like that. And I thought there were quite a few unavoidable melee combat scenarios, which sort of forced my hand. But then again, I didn't give magic enough of a try to say for sure, so I could absolutely be wrong there. But for fans of thoughtful progression systems, it's incredibly satisfying. Of course, Enderal isn't flawless. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's the perfect RPG. It was just a really great surprise. Like, some of the voice acting, especially for side characters or smaller roles, feels amateur. It ranges from stellar, like the companions or main characters, to just serviceable. And you might encounter bugs, though they're nowhere near as frequent as in the early Skyrim or any other Bethesda game for that matter. And speaking of Skyrim, because it's built on the aging creation engine, you still have to deal with some of the same jank as you're probably used to. Animation glitches, odd things happening with the physics, and the horses being basically impossible to control. Mod support is also more limited. I think because it's a total conversion, you can't just run your full Skyrim mod list, you have to get specific ones for Enderal, but I haven't dove into that side of it yet. I do plan to. Still, these issues are easy to overlook when the core experience is this good. And one very nice thing that I haven't mentioned is that for any owners of Skyrim on Steam, Enderal is totally free, and it runs on its own separate launcher. This is a huge quality of life change for what started out as a mod. It's basically, or it is, its own standalone game, and it's treated as such on Steam. I love this aspect of it because it has achievements, discussions, everything a normal Steam game would have, and it just sort of immerses me even more when playing. Overall, Enderal is probably one of the best RPGs I've played in recent memory. I put in 75 hours so far, and I think I want to do a magic playthrough and see some different events take place, so I probably will put in far more. And the best part for me is that it wasn't made by a billion-dollar studio. It was made by a group of passionate modders who had a vision and followed through. I think I read that it was some 7 to 12 core programmers that made the whole thing, and if you play through it, you would literally never be able to tell. It feels like a AAA game. It's proof that great storytelling doesn't require cutting-edge graphics or any of the insane budgets we have in modern games. Instead, great storytelling requires heart and honesty and a willingness to tackle hard questions that most games shy away from. So if you're an RPG fan, if you loved Skyrim but want something deeper or darker or more reflective, Enderal Forgotten Stories is absolutely worth your time. And the best part, like I said, is completely free if you own Skyrim. Just grab it on Steam and give it a try. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know if you've played Enderal, or if you're planning to now. I'm Senzu, and until next time, take care.